My name is Alexandros Tsiliakis. I work at the Library of the National and Technical University of Athens, and I'd like welcome you to the Elsevier webinar that is part of the 26th Pan-Hellenic Academic Libraries Conference. Again, we would like to thank our sponsor, Elsevier, for his long cooperation with Hailing and the Hailing members and his continuing support for the PALC conferences and for the Greek Library. So, without further ado, I'll introduce to our guest, Juan, who will take over the presentation. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar about Mendeley data. First of all, I would like to introduce Luigi Rucco. So Luigi Rucco is the Solution Sales Manager for Southern Europe. So I would like him to make a few words before we start this webinar. So Luigi.
Okay, thanks Juan, and thanks Alexandros. My name is Luigi Rucco, and I am the new sales manager for research intelligence solutions in Greece. So I will put my contact in the chat. Whoever is interested in bringing forward any conversation on this topic or other topics, please contact me. I will be more than happy to have a meeting with you and to discuss any possible needs. So I will leave the word to Juan, and thanks again for joining this interesting webinar.
So thank you very much, Luigi. Let's start the presentation. So I will share my screen. I will start a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so let me introduce myself more properly. So my name is Juan Garcia. I'm the Software Solutions Manager for Southern Europe in Elsevier. And today we aim to introduce a short presentation about the third data principles with Mendeley data. So our today's agenda will be made of 4 main points. So the first one is how to explain the value of the research data management from Elsevier standpoint. Then we'll make a short introduction about Mendeley data for introductions. And then we'll go through all the third principles and how can they be accomplished with Mendeley data. Finally, we'll make a round of questions and answers that, by the way, you can make through the Q&A option in the tool. So you can write any potential question that you would like to be interested. If you would like to do it in Greek, will be translated to me, so everyone can make questions, okay? And at the end, please, I will make you a short poll of just two questions, so as you can give us more feedback about the event, okay? Okay, so let's start, and let me introduce the value of the research data management. So when we talk about the research data, we are talking about not only raw data. So let me make some notes here. So when you are making some kind of research, you generate several kind of information. So you generate raw data by one hand, but you also generate process data. So sometimes the two of them are being published. For us, there are more kind of information that should be published, so as we can get from raw data to process data about that process. So by one hand, we have workflows, we have protocols, we have methods, so we have ways of doing things that are described into some specific documentation. The second point is we need to accomplish some specific environmental settings and matching settings, so we need such information as well. And finally, the way that process that information made can be described through scripts, through some specific algorithms and some extra information. All this information should also be included in the information record. And this information should be stored according to the third data principle that we'll go through this presentation. Those principles are: the information should be findable, also should be accessible to everyone. This information should be interoperable through different systems. And the most important thing, we are sharing information because we want to reuse that information. So this information should be reusable, okay? Another important thing is, which is the adoption rate of this specific information. So I've made this graph for you, and that is showing all publications published in the US, for example. So you will see that all publications have an annual growth rate of 5%. Okay, this is the blue line. But the publications with datasets are growing 21%. It means that there is a trend that shows that publications with datasets are growing and growing every year. But by the other side, we see that the impact of publications with data stock is getting more than 25% higher citation impact. So we see a specific research here, so through those researchers from different universities, that says that the citation rate of publications linked to a data set are increased by 25%. But also having a publication with data sets linked implies a higher impact of sharing and collaboration data. So you see here a specific collaboration graph regarding the US universities, for example. And you see, for example, that the universities that published datasets linked to the articles have more collaboration percentage here, a 50%, compared to the other dataset, the other articles without datasets. And also the percentage of publications with a 10% citation percentile is 25%, is even higher, compared to around 7.5% to the other publications. So including data in publications implies more collaboration among institutions and more relevance to be included in the 10% citation percentile in the databases, okay? So let me make a short introduction to Mendeley data for institutions. So Mendeley data is an end-to-end research data management solution for institutions. So it consists of 4 modules where the researchers can discover, can collect, can share data, but not only the researchers, but from an institution standpoint, the librarians and administrators can moderate, can manage, can curate, can report, and can showcase all the research data that the institutions are making. So Mendeley data is made of 4 different modules. So the first one is the Mendeley data search module. It's a search engine that is including more than 20 million data sets from more than 1,000 data repositories. Right now, it is more than 2,000 data repositories. So we are able to scan all the, let's say, research market and identify which are the main data sets published, and we can collect and put in a single database. The second module is Mendeley data repository. So as its own name says, it's a repository specialized for research data. So we can store and share that information according to the 4 principles that we already spoke at the beginning of this presentation. But also we need an additional module that allows collaboration. So with the Mendeley Data Manager module, we make a shared collaboration space where researchers can share the project data, can integrate this shared space with external data sources, and they can prepare the data sets before publishing. And finally, what about the data that is not inside the institutions? We are able to track this information through the Mendeley Data Monitor. So Mendeley Data Monitor module is a way of track data sets published outside the institutions. And we can use that information to facilitate reporting and to facilitate compliance according to the mandates of the management to report and showcase information. So this is the structure of the pricing of Mendeley data. So by one hand, we have a free layer that consists of the Mendeley data search. So the Mendeley data search module is a free module that everyone can use it. And also there is a specific free part where researchers can store their data and adding a DOI automatically and adding datasets up to 10 gigabytes. So this is a free part of the Mendeley data repository. But the most important thing is that if an institution wants to take all the institutional features, they can make and purchase the different 3 modules, Mendeley Data Repository, Mendeley Data Manager, and Mendeley Data Monitor separately. So as a first approach, everyone can use the Mendeley Data Search for free, and then the institutions can add services on top about storing data, collaboration, and reporting datasets outside the institution. This is a graph about the collaboration at institutions. So when institutions want to store private data, they can store the data with a data manager here, okay? Sorry, with that data repository. They can collaborate to generate specific data sets through the data manager, and they can make the data discoverable through the data search, okay? Let me talk a little bit about the different problems that some institutions have, or most of the institutions have, regarding the research data management. So the first one is, where are the information located? Okay, so there are 3 different families of repositories that is stored research data management in institutions. So the first one is obviously the institutional repository. It means that institutions have specific assets, a specific repository where it stores all the data. According to Elsevier information, only 10% of the public research data are stored in the institutional repository. By the other hand, institutions have spread and shared university infrastructure where researchers use it to store information. There are different groups of researchers that store information, share information inside the university infrastructure, okay? So we also have different, let's say, parallel repositories that get that information. By the other hand, we have external repositories outside of the control of the organization, where, according to Elsevier information, 90% of the public research data is stored. It means that if you make a shared working environment with different universities, for example, you may store the data outside the control of the institution. So you can use generalist or domain repositories. This 3-layer approach generates some problems that we are going to solve through Mendeley data. By one hand, what if institutions want to implement an institutional data repository? So we can use the Mendeley data repository module, where you can store data sets. You can use the institution DOI. So it means that if you have a prefix, we can synchronize that prefix to generate automatically your institutional DOI. You can showcase data through the institutional branding portal. You can add specific data collections that collect some specific information into a single one, and you can link automatically information into data. So these institutional repository features can be done through Mendeley data repository. Okay. By the other hand, for those groups that are storing data in the institution infrastructure, we are able to put all this information together through the Mendeley data manager. So Mendeley data manager is able to synchronize the different information sources into a single workspace. We are able to generate collaboration, and then we are able to send this information to the Mendeley data repository in a single one. So we are synchronizing the different institution infrastructure, and then we can send this information to the institution repository, allowing collaboration. But at the end, there is a specific needs to synchronize or to gather information outside the institution through the generalist or the domain repositories. So it means that institutions will be able to track and report the data found over more than 2,000 data repositories. So they will be able to see the data that is outside the institution, and they will see how the institutions manage the data. Okay, so this information is coming from the Mendeley data monitor. It means that institutions that want to discover and track all information outside institutions, they can use Mendeley data monitor to identify the information that it has sought institutions, track it, and report it. Another important and very useful thing is Mendeley data is not an isolated product. It means that it's totally integrated across the global RDM ecosystem. And let me have a little bit light about that. By one hand, we have a synchronization mechanisms that allows long-term preservation of the data. So we've made an agreement with Dance repository to allow a for-life long-term preservation service. So if something happens with Mendeley data, if institutions don't want to move forward with the contract, all the information stored in Mendeley data is already stored in Dance. So we are able to provide such synchronization mechanisms, and the organization can get the information back. By the other hand, we provide synchronization mechanisms with open-air systems. So Mendeley data is already indexed with open-air index, and open-air Zenodo repositories are indexed by Mendeley data search. So we offer full integration mechanisms both sides. Okay. The third point I would like to talk about is the synchronization, the automatic synchronization for making DOIs. So we've made an agreement with datasets to generate automatically DOIs whenever a new dataset is created. Also, when institutions want to synchronize the institutional prefix, we're able to synchronize that prefix with Mendeley data, so as they can create the institutional DOIs. Also, Elsevier is member of some initiatives like Scolix. So we synchronize all information about dataset with Scolix. So Scolix is a distributed database, including datasets. So we are providing such information so as everyone can see the information stored in Mendeley data. For those institutions that are generating DMPs, data management plans, we are able to synchronize DMPs with Mendeley data. So if your institutions are thinking of making a DMP, think also about Mendeley data, because we are able to integrate such plan within the tool. And finally, I think that the most important thing is that integration mechanism that we have with more than 35 different repository families around the world. So we have synchronization mechanisms with the most important repositories like Diriad, Pangea, and most of the standard mechanisms of synchronization. But Mendeley data is not only, let's say, the global ecosystem member, it's also a synchronization mechanisms for all the information sources within Elsevier. So we provide synchronization mechanisms with the Scopus, with all the information from the Scopus. We also provide synchronization with Data Monitor and Pure. So all institutions that have Pure are able to gather data from Data Monitor automatically. So we provide a connector. Also, Findable information is synchronized with Mendeley data, so we will be able to track all the information stored in Mendeley data and analyze with Findable. And finally, we are able to synchronize information about plan analytics, about statistics, about SSRN, and all the published data sets in the books and Science Direct families. Okay, and also little bit introduction to Mendeley. Although this product is called Mendeley data, is not the product Mendeley. It's a totally different brand, but we use Mendeley for synchronizing logins and for synchronizing researcher profiles. Given to that point, let me introduce the FAIR principles and how to Mendeley data can accomplish those FAIR principles. Okay, so let me introduce the FAIR principles. So the FAIR principles, as I said, are guiding principles that is making the information findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Okay. Those principles are focused to the data producers, but also the data publishers, and they want to promote the maximum use of the research data. Okay, and also institutions that want to fostering and extending research data can use the FAIR principles and its framework to promote that data. So those third principles are findable. So all the data materials have sufficiently rich metadata and a percentage identifier. They can be accessible. So the metadata and the data can be understandable to humans and machines. And the data is deposited in a trusted repository. They should be interoperable. So they need to use a formal, accessible, shared, and broadly applicable language for knowledge representation. And finally, the most important thing, they must be reusable. All the data and all the collections have a clear usage licenses and can be provided accurate information on provenance. It means that if we share that information, it must be findable, must be accessible, interoperable, but the main objective is to reuse that information. Okay. We've been working for the beginning with some agencies like Force 11. So we are making the Force 11 manifesto to promote that data management. Okay, and we are committed to making that data effective through these first data principles. But let me introduce the principle by principle, and I will explain how Mendeley data can accomplish that features. So the first one is making the data findable. Okay, so we need an application, we need a module that make the data findable. So the first point that, or the first module that we can make that data findable is the Mendeley data search. So we index data. So the data sets are indexed using metadata with many search indices. So we use, for example, the Google datasets via schema.org. We use DataCite, we use the OpenAir with OEA PMEH, and we shared information from open source frameworks. The second point is that Mendeley data search index can be make searches over 2 million data sets. So it means that we have more than 20 million data sets from thousands of public repositories. Okay, and another important thing is that, and this is the main, let's say, difference among all competitors, is that Mendeley data include deep indexing. What does deep indexing mean? So it means that we can make searches not only by attributes or metadata that all the file has. If the file has a readable format, can be indexed by Mendeley data. So if we have a specific table, like this example, for example, that have a specific field here, we can make a search by this field. Okay, it means that will be all the information stored in that file will be accessible through searches. So it is a main advantage among all competitors, because we will be able to make searches through deep indexing. Okay. Also, we are able to make advanced search queries, and it is important that we can make advanced search queries, including, for example, fields that are synchronized with databases like Findable or Scopus. And the most important thing is that all the DOIs are automatically assigned and retrieved within the Mendeley data repository. Let's go to the another one, how the data can be made accessible. Okay, in this particular point, we have two different modules that accomplish that feature. So by one hand, we have the Mendeley data repository, and the other hand, we have the Mendeley data monitor. Okay, the first one is Mendeley data, the data in Mendeley data remains owned and controlled by the institution. It means that we don't own any data, we don't control any data. Either the researcher or the institutions control Mendeley the data distributions. And we provide 16 open data licenses that can be assigned to the data. Okay. The other point is that we provide a storage solution that ensures that data sets are controlled over different access levels. So we provide, for example, to share the data openly from the beginning, to place the data under the embargo, or to share the data privately with a controlled project environment. It means that if you would like to share the data among two or three specific persons, we can do that. We provide a link. No other people can see that information. Another important thing is that when making the data accessible, we make the information accessible not only by, by the portal, we provide an open API, so as we can exchange information not only with the Elsevier products, by the other RDM tool or other systems that would like to get access to that information. Okay, and another important thing is that we provide access to the information, not only the information inside the organization. Mendeley Data Monitor provides information to track datasets outside the organizations. So we are able to provide that information so as all institutions can make the information accessible, not only from their own repositories, but the repositories outside the institution. Another important thing is how to make the data interoperable and accessed through different automatic systems. So the Mendeley data repository makes this information interoperable. So by one hand, we can reuse the information through, for example, an API. So the second point is that we can integrate different RDM tools or non-RDM tools like CRIS systems to get information through REST API. And we can, for sure, use the JSON format in the information exchange. Mendeley data repository also enables different versions of the datasets. So it means that we can make different approaches through the different versions of the information. And finally, we provide a specific control vocabularies, standard metadata fields and custom metadata fields, so as all institutions can extend the metadata coverage with Mendeley data. Another important point, and the final one, is to make the data reusable. So how to make the data reusable through the Mendeley data repository? So the first one is we provide the standards of our metadata. So we support Dublin Core and schema.org. Okay. By the other hand, as said before, we are providing custom metadata fields. So every single organization can use existing taxonomies or can create different taxonomies to add to specific datasets, so when they can customize all the information. And also we provide fields that allow to guide to reproduce the experiment or the fact step by step. It means that with all this information, all organizations will be able to make this data reusable. So let me show you some examples of organizations that are using Mendeley data. So this is an example of organization that publish a data set of author citation metrics. So they provided 100,000 scientists and 22 different scientific fields. And all the data were stored in Mendeley data. So after that trial, the data set was viewed 100,000 times with 37,000 downloads. And the institutions made custom metadata descriptors. And they included detailed reproducibility guidelines, and they use folders to separate code from data. The second example, I think, is even more important, more interesting, is we have institutions that show some specific data so as everyone can use it for deep learning. So we have a specific institutions that show information about leaves, about trees. So institutions can use AI resources like Google TensorFlow to recover all the metadata all the information in the data sets, and they could use artificial intelligence application to take advantage of that data. Okay. Finally, I would like to make a comment about the Mendeley data platform itself. So the first point is how the application is made. So we have 4 modules that can be configured according to the customer needs. So we can use the core and the storage module, but we can also make additional modules. Okay. The second point is that this is one of the most important things. The researchers and institutions own and control all the data. It means that Elsevier doesn't control the data, Elsevier doesn't own the data, and all the users of Mendeley data can use more than different 16 open data licenses. So all the data stay in full control of the organization. The third point is Mendeley data is an open system. So it means that it's a flexible platform. So all modules can be used together, standalone, or combined with other RDN solutions through the API. Fourth, and this is a real important thing. Mendeley data can increase the exposure of the impact of the research. So we have information of over 20 million data sets from more than 1,000 different repositories. So if you are using Mendeley data or you are part of Mendeley data, you will be part of that initiative. And talking about the initiative, Elsevier is an active participant in the open data community. So we have more than 20 projects globally that take advantage of this initiative, and we are proud of being a member of those 20 different projects. Okay. If you need to know more about that, so it is Elsevier Solutions Mendeley Data Platform Life Hacks. It's a very important thing to know. So let's wrap it up, and we will be able to make some questions and answers. So we've been talking about the value of the research data management. So we said that data is not only the raw data or the process data, it's all information around this experiment regarding algorithms, regarding environmental settings that we need to publish to make the data reusable. We made an overview of the Mendeley data for institutions. We saw the 4 different modules and how can they be used. And finally, we made a review of the main fair data principles and how can Mendeley data accomplish to that principles. Okay. So we finished that presentation. I think it is time for questions. So the questions and answers option is open. So please write any question that you have. I will try to answer that. So again, we can use the questions and answers. So we'll be happy to answer any question.
Αν θέλετε να θέσετε κάποια ερώτηση στα ελληνικά, μπορούμε να το μεταφράσουμε.
No questions? Alexandros, could you translate that for me? There's a question from Dimitra. Alexandros, could you please translate that question for me?
Unfortunately, the Zoom doesn't show me the questions. One moment.
Okay, so in the meantime, there is another question. So hello, and thank you for your presentation. How someone reference a dataset using Mendeley data or desktop, and so important in a paper. Thank you. Okay, so I didn't want to open the tool, but when creating a dataset, you are able to. There is a reference that you can use it for sheet 8. Okay, And when you open Mendeley data as a tool and the Mendeley data search, and you discover a record, you will be able to have a citation information in the page. Okay. So there is another question. Can you please describe the research data on social science? Yeah, for sure. So, imagine any historical department that are making some research of, let's say, art. Okay, so it means that you can store information about paintings, for example, before and after they've been restored. For economy or for social science, you can store, for example, data about polls and all the research made. Using, for example, artificial intelligence mechanisms through economy, for example, you can make different studies. So such information can be stored also as a data sets, so as everyone can use that information. So don't think the typical experiment of a DNA research. Think of all the useful information that you've been developing through a specific research in any matter. No, not only in STEM, but also in social science, and you would like to share. You can share, for example, in a restoration mechanism, you can share the picture of a painting, the final result of a painting, and also of all of techniques and procedures that were made in the mechanism of restoration. So yeah, so you can do that very easily. Okay. Also, there is a question in Greek that unfortunately I'm not able to understand. So Alexandros, if you are able to read that question and translate into English for me. Oh, it was the same question. Okay, Dimitra, thank you very much. Any more questions? I'll give you just 1 more minute, and if not, I will go to the poll. I'm reading the chatter. So Angela, thank you very much as well for your feedback. Okay, so finally, let me go to the last poll. So let me open the poll to everyone. And there are a couple of questions. So the first one is, how would you rate this webinar overall? And the second question is, would you recommend this webinar to your colleagues? So I'll give you just 1 minute so as everyone can fill out the poll. Thank you very much in advance for your feedback. It's 30 seconds left. Ten seconds. Okay, perfect. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. These are my contact details. Luigi also has his contact details in the chatter. So it's been a pleasure sharing with you this time today. Anything that you need, you have my contact, you have my mail, or I'll be here for a couple of minutes more if you like. So it's been a pleasure. Luigi, don't know if you want to say goodbye to everyone.
Yes, thanks, Juan. Goodbye, everyone. I will write again my email address in the chat in case anyone wants to reach out to bring forward the conversation on research data management. I would be very happy to discuss with you any interest in this kind of tools. Okay. Thanks again, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.